First of all, thanks for having me into this conference. We've done it a couple times now, or a few times, and it's always a very good place for investors to hear about some good and up and coming junior mining and other small cap stories. So we're happy to be here and to share the stage with, well, several or a bunch of other very interesting companies. But today I'm going to be talking to you about Summa Silver. Summa Silver is a company that I actually founded about 3 years ago now, right in the beginning of the COVID craziness. But it better to be lucky than good sometimes, and we timed it very well in that. That summer of 2020 was very good for precious metals, and we started drilling that summer and haven't really stopped since, except for the holidays and things like that. So really, we're really focused on historic American high grade silver districts that although they've had say prolific past production going back to the 1800s, haven't seen much or any modern exploration before we started working on them. And we very quickly, with a modern focused scientific surgical approach, have shown that both of these districts and both of these projects that we're working on have a lot of juice left to squeeze in them. They say the best place to find a new mine is next to an old mine. And I like to keep it really simple. Me being a geologist, and exploration is hard enough, this is a really good way to do it. So one of the projects, our first project, is in Nevada. It's the eastern half of the old Tonopah mining district, and its extensions. They said that when you drive into Nevada, it still says "Welcome to Nevada, the Silver State." That's because of these two old, famous, historic producing silver districts. One being the Comstock Lode up by Reno and Carson City. The other being the Tonopah mining district. And I've heard a saying that the Comstock made Nevada a state. And then that Tonopah kept it a state, which I think is pretty interesting. The second project is in New Mexico. It's called the Mogollon project. It's the largest historic silver producer in New Mexico, produced between the 1800s and 1942. And again, no real modern exploration. And our work there has been very successful so far. Both these projects have big scale potential, lots of zones over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 grams per ton. But what we need to do is wrap our arms around what's remaining there. And that's what we're diligently doing now. So just to briefly introduce the team, because for us, this is obviously a big focus. And I won't introduce everybody on this list, but to quickly introduce myself, Galen, I'm a geologist going back about 15 years. Before founding Summa, I was managing all the drilling for a company called Next Gen Energy, and we, of course, had some very good successes in uranium in the Athabasca Basin. Chris York is our VPX down in Nevada. He joined us from Hecla a couple years ago, and he manages all of the drilling at site. Chris Leslie, he is a senior geologist. He's one of the guys that discovered the Blackwater gold deposit in British Columbia. Something like 8 million ounces in the proven and probable categories of gold right now. Last guy I'll just talk about, Jordi Belfiore. If people on this call or anyone, he's almost he's as much of the face of Summa Silver as I am, in that if someone's calling you, it's probably him, or if you're contacting the company, you're probably talking to him. But anyways, long story short, group of mid-career, mostly geologists who have had a lot of success in the past and now want to have a lot more. Okay, so let me introduce the capital structure. 95 million shares outstanding, 123 million fully diluted. Our share price, I think this morning, is in the low 50s, which gives us a general market cap of, say, around $50 million. For us, we're in a great position in that we've got $7.5 million in working capital and cash. So, that is a really good place to be right now, given the condition of the markets. Right half of the slide, our largest shareholder is Eric Sprott. He's been with us pretty much every step of the way, going back to financings in 2020 at 25 cents. And then I'd just like to point out here, analyst coverage. We've got Research Capital covering us right now with a $2 price target. And please reach out to me or to Arlen anytime, and we'll send you over all that coverage. Okay, so let me talk about the projects now for the rest of this, to introduce you to why I think these have the potential to host the next 100 to multi-100 million ounce silver deposits, both of them. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the Mogollon project. This one is in southwestern New Mexico. Largest historic silver producer in New Mexico, with 16.4 million ounces of silver and 340-ish thousand ounces of gold. produced at a grade of a little under 800 grams per ton silver equivalent that we know of. And just a heads up, whenever I say silver equivalent in this talk, I mean there's just silver and gold. There's no lead or zinc or anything like that being included in that calculation. I've got a few cliches here on the left half of this slide, underexplored, unfinished business, multiple targets. Well, you know what? Let me just maybe put that into context by giving a bit of a history of this project, and that it was discovered in the 1880s by a sergeant in the U.S. Cavalry who kept his discovery secret until he got out of the military. Produced between the 1880s and 1942, and it only shut down in 1942 because that's when the U.S. went into World War II. So that's when all silver and gold mining stopped there, by executive order, by presidential order. So between then and say between the end of the war and the 1970s, not too much happened here. A lot of people in this part of the world were looking for that big open pit copper deposit. This is very close to a big mine called Morenci, which is one of the top 10 copper producers in the world. So people were either looking for those types of deposits, or up in Nevada, they were looking for the Carlin style gold deposits where you could get 2 grams per ton in an open pit, and it's basically a license to print money. So places like this were largely forgotten, but as you get a little closer to today, we've got these successes like the Silvercrests of the world, or the Vizslas of the world, or the Mag Silvers of the world, going back to the mid 2000s, where you've got these companies now that have gone into these old districts and really shown that there can be a lot of value unlocked in these places. So that's what we're in the process of doing now. Okay, so briefly introduce some drill results, and then we're going to switch to some interesting 3D views. This is just a zoom in on the first area that we've drilled. It's about a 500-meter strike length. Holes like 433 grams per ton silver equivalent over 23 meters. 448 grams per ton silver equivalent over 31 meters. Very, very wide, high-grade intersections. Down here on the other side of the deposit, of the first deposit, 640 grams per ton over 9.9 meters. So we're obviously onto something here that could be quite significant. Now, again, we're going to I'm going to attempt to show you what the big picture potential is. Okay, so switching to 3D, here we are in New Mexico. We're down here in Catron County, southwestern New Mexico. The population is something like 3,000 people. It's almost the size of the state of New Jersey. The largest industry is ranching. And you know what the funny thing is? Well, maybe not funny thing. I think I'm saying that wrong. But the interesting thing is there's not even a traffic light in the entire county. So zooming in and looking at the site, here we are. That's the shape of it. You see the road that bypasses the project. We stay down here in this little town of Alma. And this is about a 4-hour drive from Tucson, Arizona. And I'm just a quick view of what site looks like. This is always interesting. Here we go. This is what the site looks like. I'll just zoom around. And please, when we have more time, please go ahead and look at this on our website. It's quite interesting. And I just like to look at this because this is eye-opening, this north view I'm going to click on, where if I zoom around, I can see quartz veins at surface, and this big structure here that I'm highlighting with my mouse is actually a very large quartz vein that we recently staked the northern extension of. Heavily mineralized. Okay, so again, here's the project. With the red lines are the veins, and just to put that into perspective, if we look underground, we can see them there. Those are really the principal targets of what we're looking to find silver and gold in, and so far so good. Zoom in on them. We took a bunch of samples at surface. Again, to remind you, this hasn't seen any modern exploration. Before we started working here, we didn't even have any samples at surface. And here are some of the grades. 1,000 grams per ton, 1,400 grams per ton, 2,000, 4,000. I don't need to read them all out. Long story short, over an area of several kilometers by several kilometers, there's still lots of joy at surface and no modern exploration in a lot of these areas. Let's keep going. Okay, so zooming into the first area that we've drilled, this is called the Consolidated Mine. And what we've done is we've just stepped out around this old mine with 19 drill holes, and there's 8 historic holes there as well, and delineated our first mineralized zone. So it's really, again, not rocket science. You're just looking around where you already know there's mineralization. Some of the results, I've been through these, but here's on one side, 448 grams per ton over 31 meters in this hole. And then on the other side, 640 grams per ton silver equivalent over 9.9 meters. And if you look at this and you can zoom in, you can see there's just still a lot of room for these zones to continue to grow. So that's one of the priorities that we'll be working on starting later this fall. But let's zoom out. So here we are, we're looking at, this is called the Queen Vein, 2 kilometers on the Queen Vein, where we've got other shallow old mines and no real drilling below them. And that we've got, okay, well, we know that there's heavy mineralization over here in the Deadwood, which we recently acquired. Very strong mineralization, kilos per ton. Same thing in the Everly, which we also recently acquired. Kilos per ton. And then in the Clifton, there's a few good sniffs. So, you know, we've got these open zones where we know there's mineralization along 2 kilometers. And what we're going to do this starting later this fall, the plan is to come in here and just start to paint that picture with drill holes so we can see what we think is the overall potential on this, just this 2 kilometers of vein. But if you zoom way out and go back to looking at the entire project, I mean, we've drilled half a kilometer of the Queen Vein. There's 2 kilometers that we're targeting now. Well, there's 77 kilometers of cumulative vein on this property. Again, most of which is completely underexplored, unexplored, and much of which is heavily mineralized at surface. Okay, so the option terms on this, we currently own 75%. And then we're on a path to own 100% by the end of this year by making a $3 million US share payment to a company called Allegiant Gold, which also trades on the TSXV under AUAU. Okay, so that's the New Mexico project, Mogollon. Let me tell you now about the Hughes project in central Nevada. So the Hughes project is the eastern half of the Tonopah mining district. District-wide produced something like 175 million ounces of silver and 1.86 million ounces of gold at really high grades of 1,235 grams per ton silver equivalent that we know of. We've done a lot more of our work here, have drilled 60 holes, and I think are drilling the 61st right now, just finishing the last hole of the season. Some of our results, 3971 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.8 meters, 536 grams per ton silver equivalent over 18 meters, 1450 grams per ton silver equivalent over 3 meters, and a brand new discovery, by the way. But hey, you know, like I'm throwing too many numbers out here. You know, let me show some maps to get into perspective. Oh yeah, and then just the last thing I like to just point out on this slide is that we called it the Hughes property because, or the Hughes project, excuse me, because it was formerly owned by Howard Hughes. So that's just a little tip of the cap to the history around here. Okay, so here's a map over 3.5 kilometers. The white shapes are our target areas, our first target areas. There's subsequently more. I just, instead of running you through a bunch of high-grade drill results on the left, I just like to concentrate on the map on the right here. So there's 4 targets here. The 2 targets, Murray and the Belmont Mine, those are in the historic part of the district where we're chasing things that the old timers didn't get to or missed. This is where we've done most of the work, extensive 3D modeling, extensive vein modeling for the first time. And this is where we've had most of our success. And I like to say that every hole that we drill, you know, in these 2 targets, Murray and Belmont, we're systematically adding ounces. So that's great. That's half the story. The other half of the story is the discovery potential to the east of the district. So Mizpah extension, Ruby, and then moving even further out to the east is that'll show you in the next few slides is that, you know, we're looking for an extension of the entire district. Like, where's that next 200 million ounces? And we're on to some very interesting prospects. So this slide here is a long section. Think of it as an underground side view, where we've got the surface up here, the different target names above that. And each one of these dots is where a drill hole would have come through the page. It's called a pierce point. So here's all our work in the historic part of the district, Murray, you know, where we've hit pretty well. You know, red, this is Belmont here, where we've hit pretty well. You can see our success rate. Every hole that's a different color than blue is a hit. Our success rate is pretty good. I think there's only 5 blue holes there. And then what happened there is a fault zone called the Halifax Fault, where the veins, you know, if we're thinking left to right here on this page, ran into that fault, and the old-time miners lost them on the far side, on the right side. Well, we think now that we're onto them again. We've drilled, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes to the east of that over a very large strike length, and all 5 of them have hit. So for an example, this hole out here at Sapphire, 376 grams per ton silver equivalent over 1.5 meters. It's pretty good. It's more than just a sniff. It's a new discovery, a new mineralized zone. But that was a wildcat drill hole about between 4.5 and 4 kilometers east of the mining district, and we're still hitting veins out there that are mineralized. I mean, look at all this open space here. The other big news from us this summer from this project, hole SUM 2359 intersected 3 meters of 1,450 grams per ton silver equivalent in a brand new vein. So it's very, very early days for these discoveries out here. And we're currently drilling one more hole out here now that I'm just going to show you as we continue. But let's switch to 3D. So here's a map of Nevada. Project is about halfway between Reno and Las Vegas, right on the highway. Now here's a map of the project. You've got US Highway 6 and US Highway 95 coming through. This is the town of Tonopah. And I'm just going to zoom in and look at this site tour again. We'll just take a quick look. Okay, so, we'll pan from right to left. Our project is over here, Murray. That's one of our targets. I'm just going to pan over. You see the town. See the veins actually outcropped here, but they're long gone now. The old timers definitely got those 100+ years ago, but we'll keep panning to the left. You move out, you see the historic Belmont Mine was here. You can still see the mill foundations there if you're ever in that area. Tailings, and then way out to the east, Ruby, and past that, Sapphire. And I think this is the type of thing that shows the scale over, from Murray to Ruby out to Sapphire, something like 7.5 kilometers, and we've hit, over that strike length. That's a pretty big deal. Okay, now here are some of all the targets put into perspective, but let's just roll through some views. I'm going to zoom into the Belmont Mine first. Again, looking underground to some of the drills and the results. There we go. This is a view that I think really puts it into perspective on Belmont, and that, okay, see all of the veins here. It's just vein on vein on vein on vein. There's dozens and dozens, and we've modeled them all. And this has really been a little bit of an ace up our sleeve to maximize our success rate. Like we know where those veins are. We know how to test them. We really know how to look for them. Let's keep going here. Some of the results. I don't need to stop on this, but this is where we've had a lot of our really, really strong results. Now we're going to move over and look at the Murray, which is a couple kilometers to the west. Again, similar thing. We'll see that there's multiple veins here, vein on vein that are stacked. And this is a really good way to build ounces when you've got, veins on top of each other. If you've got 3 or 4 pierce points a hole, sometimes, you're really maximizing, what you can do with one drill hole and minimizing the cost, the discovery cost on a per ounce basis. Okay, now let's look over here, back to the exploration upside. This is Ruby. Swinging around to underground. Perfect. Okay, so this is just to put into perspective what we're doing now. These are the 4 holes we've drilled at Ruby. This is the 1,450 grams per ton silver equivalent over 3 meters. We're currently drilling this hole now. It's right about right there. So approaching target, you can see there's a hole that goes through those blobs. But let me explain these blobs. What they are is geophysical anomalies. So the green is resistivity, and that means more quartz. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for quartz veins. The red is chargeability. That means more pyrite, just to keep it really simple. That's usually the alteration around the mineralization in systems like this. So, well, why does this matter? Well, this target is between 1.5 kilometers and 3 kilometers, right along strike from one of the best historically producing silver districts in the United States. Not only was it not known about before a couple summers ago when we did this work, it's completely untested. And we've got a lot of smoke around it where we're really starting to hit good mineralization and great alteration. So the hole that we're drilling now is testing just the heart of this anomaly, and we're getting really close to the target where we should know in the next couple of weeks what's there. And lastly, just over at Sapphire, where we have one hole I was explaining earlier in the presentation, one hole, very wildcat. I like to call it a Hail Mary, where we have 1.5 meters of 376 grams per ton. This is 4.5 kilometers east of the historic Tonopah mining district along strike. So a lot of room between where we know there's mineralization, a lot of work to do. And what we'll do is we'll just keep stepping out systematically. So that's Arlen, I see he's coming back on here. One more slide here before we end. The thing I like to do when I first started working on this district was, okay, well, how does Tonopah compare to some of the famous Mexican mining districts that the Spanish and have been mining going back 500 years, or even previous to that, the indigenous peoples? Well, Tonopah produced over a strike length of 4 kilometers, 175 million ounces of silver and 1.9 million ounces of gold. Well, look at Guanajuato or Sandy Mass or Pachuca, a lot more strike length and many more ounces produced. That just makes sense intuitively. So I'm on the bottom half of this slide. The length of this white bar is that mine strike length. So for Tonopah, 4 kilometers, add 1.3 kilometers onto it, which is where we're hitting at Ruby. Let it run out to another 3.5 kilometers past that. And it gets to be really
World
fits in
class.
quite nicely with how these districts can look when they get to be truly world class. And it was this realization actually that when I had this, when we were putting the company together, I flew down to Tonopah and stayed at a little motel down there with an airport rental car and went and staked a bunch of claims myself. So, yeah, we're looking forward to results here and lots of good stuff coming from us in the next 6 to 12 months. Thanks very much, and yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, well, I got some questions here. When you talk about Mogollon and your results are 100% silver and gold, do you have lead and zinc in that system?
None.
Okay.
Zero.
So can you tell investors like why that's important geologically, like where you are in the system?
Yeah, well, you know what? It's where you are in the system, but sometimes these things have lead and zinc in them. Sometimes they don't, and for whatever reason, we don't here. We've got some new samples on surface that show some really high grade copper, like up to 18% copper. But where we're drilling and where most of the mineralization is just silver and gold. And what that means, it's a really clean ore.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to process, and typically the environmental footprint in the processing is much lower because you don't need to use different things to try to recover the lead in the zinc. It's much simpler, much cleaner, and much easier to mitigate environmental risk.
Yeah, but you're also not inflating your precious metals grades with base metals, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
that's exactly right. So
yeah,
just to put this into perspective, for Tonopah, if you think of the assays that we have as a value, it's about the value for every ton is about 70% silver and 30% gold. In
right.
New Mexico, it's 50 to 60% silver and the rest gold.
Mm. So yeah, I think that makes you like a real pure play for precious metals for the gold and silver bugs out there. Galen,
For
like
sure.
we've been working together for a long time, and I guess one thing I really commend you on is just you're quite young in the industry, right? But your ability to manage capital and shareholder expectations, right? Like the market's good, we can raise money, but I see so many young CEOs go, wow, this is always going to be here. And I think you're in a very enviable position. You got strong backing by Eric Sprott. Now you've got 2 very good discoveries in the US. And I don't think there's a lot of silver plays out there that kind of offer that type of leverage, right? Especially in the US. Right. So
Yeah.
how do you manage that capital in this tough environment? Like, where do you see you spending your money for the most ROI for your shareholder capital?
That's a really good question. That's something we think about, all the time, every day, to be honest with you.
You have to.
Excuse me, I'm just working on it cold here, but let me kind of get a little bit more into that, where one of the things I ask myself is, okay, where are our discovery costs going to be lowest? And I think right now they're in New Mexico because you can drill a hole there that's 30 meters of 450 grams silver equivalent, right?
Mm.
So that's really what a guiding light. At the same time though, we have a very well-funded treasury right now, but is it the right time to put 4 rigs on something? Probably not. But does that mean it's the right time to not do anything? Well, no. We always have to be adding value. So I have to ask myself constantly, and our board, how do we best do that, and where do we get the most bang for our buck?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's no, you've done a great job. Now I saw a bunch of activity in your stock last week. Was that some fund rebalancing? Do we know?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
was the SILJ ETF rebalancing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last
Yeah.
week. So,
Awesome.
I was actually a little bit surprised that we
Yeah.
were benefiting. I thought it would be probably neutral. Maybe they've had some inflows into their fund, or maybe they like us better than some of the other companies
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
it already.
Okay, so you're actively drilling at Tonopah right now, correct? When do you
Correct.
see you'll get back to Mogollon?
We're planning right now, later this fall for sure.
Okay.
And I'm looking forward to sharing that when we get our plan finalized.
Yeah, yeah. And then, so how far are you along on the Tonopah drilling program then?
Oh, like it should be done within a couple weeks. We've
Okay,
been dealing with some interesting challenges and ground conditions
as
and
always.
hole and drill hole challenges,
You're a mining
but
company, or expert.
make it, yeah, making progress.
Yeah, that's good. And then, so is most of the drilling at Tonopah exploration drilling? Are you really trying to see where that blue sky is right now? Or are you
That's
definition?
what that's correct. That's what this
Yeah,
summer has been about.
yeah,
I think we drilled 6 holes there and 2 new discoveries. That's pretty good. And you know what?
yeah,
I'm out there at the property, and I think to myself, I go and stand on these targets and prospect around them, and I look back and I can literally see the mines of the Tonopah Mining District, and we're right along strike from them. It's kind of
yeah,
like, okay, yeah, game on.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Galen, that's it for the day. Great to see you. You look great. All the best for more continued success, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Arlen. And again, thanks for the invitation.